Hey, welcome back to my channel. Just want to go through this 3-inch build with you in case you might want to get yourself a 3-inch with kind of a higher endurance motor. Might not be the fastest or the most wicked, but with these motors I get anywhere around 6, give or take a minute, depending on how much you're pushing it. But this is a 3-inch. It's running 4S battery, and this is the batteries that I'm currently using. I'm kind of on the fence of which one I like the most, but you can see the tattoo is quite a bit smaller. It does seem like it's a little bit wider, but these are the two batteries I'm running right now on this, and being 4S on a 1206 4500 kV motor, they move right along. So in this video I'm gonna go through this 3-inch quad kind of in detail. I'm gonna go through information on the VTX. I'm gonna go through some information on the receiver and the camera and some of the other components, how I wired it, how I set up the modes and the mixers and all the things in the transmitter. And then we're going to look at beta flight and kind of give you an overview of, if you're wanting to build one of these yourself, you can, pretty much get the same exact components and build this thing and have as much fun as me. I really like this quad. I think it's really fast. I think it has a good flight time. And I think if you were to want to build one yourself, you would have a pretty nice setup. So I just kind of want to go through some things with you and show you what I've done to put this together. This kind of thing sticking out here, I've made that because I fly line of sight quite a bit. So these are actually teeny LED pads that I've just kind of adhered to my little homemade plate. So I have one on the front, which is white, and I have one on the back, which is red. And they are super bright. I can go 500 feet away and have no problem with orientation. And then I just have little rubber bumpers on the little foamy bumpers on the bottom, so it sits nice and flush. So just kind of go through this quad. I'm willing to kind of take things apart and show you what I've done, where I've wired things, go in the beta flight, show you all the configurations, and also go through, what all I've done as far as setup and transmitter modes and mixes and everything. The only modification that I had to do to the frame was this standoff was too far back, because the Mamba stack, the connector that goes to the flight controller from the ESC kind of sticks out a little far. So I drilled a new hole in the top plate, which is here. The old hole's back here, so I had to drill a new hole in the top and bottom plate for this standoff. So that's the only modification I had to do to the frame. I have all my motor wires running under the ESC, and we'll go ahead and take the VTX off, and we'll take the flight controller loose, and we'll get you a little bit of a look of what's going on in there as well. Alright, so I've taken the screws, the little nuts off here, so we can pull this VTX up out of our way. And this VTX is the Speedy Bee TX 500, so it's not the DVR version. And this is a 5-volt VTX. So you want to make sure you don't run that off VBAT. It says that it can go up to 500 milliwatt. I normally run 25 or 200. So now we have our flight controller. There's really nothing to look at underneath, in between the flight controller and the ESC. There's really nothing in between there, so we can kind of stay above the ESC. But when you mount the ESC, you can run your motor wires. So you'll have motor 1 going to these pads. You can either do the top or bottom, and that's what I really like about this stack, was that there was pads on the top and the bottom, because I prefer to run my motor wires under the ESCs. I feel it's just a much cleaner look. All your motor wires stay flush against the frame. It's a preference for me. I never like having them hanging out here, going, across here. So they're nicely tucked away. So you can do it however you want, but the pads are on the ESCs, they're pretty good size. Let me see if I can get a close up here. So you can see the motor pads are, decent size. I'm going to put a box underneath this. I can't get my camera to zoom in any further, so I'm going to go ahead and boost this up to you so you can see a little bit better. Alright, on the flight controller, we have all of our connections. Now this thing in the middle, I did a video earlier. I've installed a reel pit so I can turn my VTX on and off. Because I fly line of sight so much, it's nice to have the VTX and the camera powered off. Now I have my camera powered off the flight controller, but if you have a VTX where you're powering your camera from it, it will shut your VTX and your camera off. But I'm running the camera power from the flight controller. So if you want to watch the video, it's a pretty long video of installing this, but I thought I would try to do a good job showing how to install this, because a lot of people have this Mamba stack in ready to fly builds, and they may not be, so much as far as building, or you're yourself. But we'll go through everything here. So if you were to want to build this same exact setup, you should be able to do that. So on this line up here, that little tab right there is our S-bus line. So that's going to the RXSR. And then there's 2 in between it and this red one. The 2 in between is a PPM and a 3.3 volt, which we didn't use. We have our 5 volt right here, so number 4. That's running the power to the RXSR. And then we have the ground for the RXSR. So that's these wires here. Okay. On the RXSR, you have a S port, uninverted S port. So that's what I have coming off here, and it's going into the TX pad, my TX6 pad. Battery voltage pad, and then a ground pad, and then the next pad over is RX6 and then TX6. So I have this little blue uninverted, so there's a little teeny pad on the RXSR. I've got one here that I was doing a little bit of stuff to. I've taken the connector off of this. Okay, so there's no connector on this RXSR. I just unsoldered it and ran it that way. But there's a little pad right here that allows you to get an uninverted smart port telemetry. So this is a telemetry smart port telemetry pad. So that's what this blue wire runs from that smart port pad. It comes down here and goes into the TX6 pad on the flight controller. So then in beta flight, we have to do a couple things to get that to recognize that. Now, so we have our S bus. Let's go back to this side here. We have our S bus, our 5-volt power, our ground. The next thing is our video out. Okay, so that little yellow wire right there, that's the pad that you're going to use for your VTX. So we're going to send our signal from our camera into the flight controller through the OSD, and it will come out right here. Okay, so that's a video out pin that will go to the VTX. So this is the connector for our VTX. The green line is our smart audio. So if your VTX supports smart audio, where you can go into your OSD and change parameters, that's your smart audio. The black line is your ground. The red line is your 5-volt. Okay, so that all goes to the VTX. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. All 4 of those wires go to your VTX. Now you have your video in, so from your camera. Okay, just 3 lines coming in from your camera. So you have your video in to your flight controller, your ground, and your 5-volt. Okay. On the front side, the only thing we have here is the bus line coming in from the ESC. And then also on the end here, they had a little two little wires going to a little connector. It basically looks like this. Okay, and then you'll plug in a buzzer here. Now I've taken that off, and I've ran my own wire to my buzzer here. So you can do what you want to do with that. Now, underneath the RXSR, inside here, you see some thicker wire running from the battery leads. Now that wiring here is nothing more than powering my LEDs. My LEDs are powered on all the time. It's only 0.33 amps. I have a capacitor, which is a 1000 microfarad 35-volt capacitor in here that I have directly soldered to the hot and ground pads on the ESC. On the underside of the ESC, I've connected this XT30. So this XT30 is soldered to the underside of the ESC. Top side of the ESC is the wiring for the LEDs. So you don't have to worry about that. You can just put the capacitor on and you'll be fine. And then we're running on all 4. We have the GEP RC 1206 4500 Spitix motors. And then the 3-inch A-Van props. These are the Baby Hawk props. And this combination for me seems to rip around pretty good. I have a flight video that I did at the park, so you can kind of look through the videos in my channel and you'll see a flight video of this. I think it's a ton of fun. And if you're just kind of cruising around, you know, you're looking at, I've gotten over 7 minutes, not much over, but it's about 7 minutes. And if you're ripping pretty hard, you can go 4.5, 5.5. The battery sag is not real bad, but as far as the components and where things are wired, you just leave a comment or a question, and I can do my best to answer whatever you might have. But this is how I've wired this up. The reel pit, I do have a video on that. I don't really want to get too much into the reel pit because this is just simply splicing in between your hot line for your VTX then connecting into the real pit, and then coming out of the real pit going to the VTX. So it comes from the flight controller into the real pit, out of the real pit into the VTX. And then you have to have an empty UART. This Mamba stack didn't have an empty UART, so I had to resource the LED pad to be able to use mode switches to have a switch for this to work. And like I said, I got a whole video on that. The RXSR, I have upgraded the firmware to make sure that I have Lewis script, and also to fix some of the bugs with the, sensor lost and all the other stuff that was going on. So I have upgraded the RXSR. All right, so kind of went through quickly the wiring. There is, if you purchase the Mamba stack, there is a diagram. It's pretty much going to give you the layout and the pins, everything, basically. Sorry, it's orient is that way. So you have your LED pads here, and then all of this stuff here is all in this connector. And then everything I just went through, all the wiring I just went through with are these pads here. And the only wire that I have on this side is the TX6 pad, which is this one here. Okay? That TX6 is the only thing that I'm using on that side for the smart port telemetry from the RXSR. Alright, so the VTX is the Speedy Bee VTX. I feel like it does a great job. I've flown, just with this little dipole antenna, I've flown 400 or 500 feet away, low to the ground, behind a couple houses, swimming pool, above ground swimming pool, and I've had pretty good video. I've actually had lower RSSI ratings than having. Now I do have the rapid fire module, which seems to do pretty good. On 200 milliwatt, this thing goes pretty far. And then, like I said, the camera, the micro camera, you can kind of pick whatever you want. And on this frame, the inside of this frame is exactly 20 millimeters. Now, the other thing that I liked about this frame is when you're wiring in, like you're doing the wiring for these LEDs, there's a cutout in the bottom of this. So you're able to run wiring, or if you wanted to, you could run your RXSR up here in the front, and then your antennas could come out through this opening without, having much issue of chafing or getting damaged. And then you can get into your wiring through this other hub. So it's a pretty decent frame design. I liked it when I looked at it, and so far I've ran well over a couple hundred packs through this thing, and everything you see here is original. Knock on wood. Haven't had any super crashes, but it's seen its fair share of cartwheels. So I'm just going to put this back together, obviously off camera, and then we will look at my transmitter. I have the QX7 transmitter, and I'll just go through some of the modes, what I've set up for, we'll go through the screens on that. One other thing I thought I'd mention is I have a double strap, and these straps, they do have the silicone layering, and these straps are pretty important. I also have Oma Grip. I don't know if you ever use this stuff. It's fantastic. I highly recommend it. If you have a battery on a quadcopter, you should have some of this holding it on. It's great because it gets a little dusty or dirty, and it gets a little less sticky, if you will. And all you do is just wipe it off with a moist towel, and it's sticky again. So that stuff is amazing, and not to mention that it's thick. I had a lot of issues with the manufacturer. This manufactured supplies you with a battery pad, but they're too thin, and then the screws, on an impact or even a small crash, rip a hole in the battery or something. So this stuff is pretty thick, and it's like a gel. But yet it's strong enough it doesn't allow the battery to get into those screws. Now on this frame, it's big enough I don't have to worry too much about it. And of course I got suckered into buying one of these. It's not terrible, but this little 3-inch, it's tough to get, too much on there. You got your battery and placed right about like that. So you do have some room to put this little dinky camera, but for me it's not really recording high definition, and then the lens is such a narrow field of view. But if you have like a really tiny camera, I'm sure you could put it on there, because this thing would have no problem carrying a really small, camera. Probably not a GoPro, but I thought I'd mention that battery pad and then these two straps. So this frame is long enough to run everything like that. So let's get to the transmitter, and I'll show you each screen. All right, we have our transmitter. We have it powered on. Let me get this out of your way. All right. So I've called this model Freestyle. And now if we just page the first page, everything's set up pretty much normal. I have my '16 channel, RX number 8, and then I have no pulse on the failsafe. That's pretty much it for that screen. I don't have anything on that one or that one. And then inputs, I have my throttle, aileron, elevator, rudder, and then the next one I have is for arming. Now for arming, I do a little bit different. Okay, I have my arming switch here. So as I pull forward one time, that sets off my beeper. Pull forward again, that's arming, but it won't arm the quadcopter until I pull up on this switch. So when I pull up on this switch and then flip it into arm, now you see that I don't know if you can see that. Let me show you again. Watch this, where it says SA arm. Watch what happens if I flip that. Nothing. Oops, let me drop down out of that menu. Sorry. Watch that SA arm right there. So if I flip that, nothing. See, it's still light colored. It's not bold. So if I pull up on that, which is, this, they call it sticky switch or secondary arming. I have to hold up on that and then arm it. See how it just went bold? Let me show you again. So that tells me that my safety arming is working. So if I pull out, hit my jacket on that or snag something on that, it's not going to just arm the quad all of a sudden. I have to pull up on this momentary switch. This momentary switch also acts as air mode. So when I release it, it activates air mode. Because sometimes I'm flying at a buddy's or something, and his deck is really high off the ground. My deck is pretty high off the ground. So I take off and land on my deck. I don't want air mode on, and I'm not going to drop my quad down to the concrete or onto the deck. So I'm going to pull up on that to disable air mode to take off and land. So I don't have to just kill the switch close to the ground and hope that I'm close enough. So I can pull up on that to disable air mode. And then I can land nice and smooth, throttle it all the way down, disarm. And then when I take off, I can take off without having, if there's a little bounce or a little wind or you tap the handrail or something, the thing goes crazy. Well, with this disengaged, you don't have that issue. So you don't have air mode on all the time. So when we go into beta flight, you're going to kind of wonder like, oh, your air mode's not turned on. Well, I have my air mode on a switch. So this acts as my sticky switch for arming, and then it acts as my air mode. That's really the only thing special. I have angle, horizon, and then acro. And then I have my beeper. So the first one is, arming. And then this one is my mode switch. So that runs your what mode you're going to be in, horizon or acro. And then the next one down is my beeper. So you can see that. And then the beeper's on this switch here. So in the middle, my beeper will go off in case it's stuck in the weed somewhere. The next one is air mode, which is this one. So when I flip this switch here, that's going to run my air mode. And then I have turtle on this switch. So all the way forward gives me turtle, so I can arm and then flip out of something. On a 3-inch, air mode's kind of tough, because if the grass is just a little bit tall, you're gonna burn your motors up before you flip out of the grass. I mostly have turtle mode for just when the grass is short, or if I'm on, some sort of surface. I sure hope that screen's coming in here. So that turtle mode runs on this switch. And then the next one is pit. This is my real pit. And that's this switch here. So when this switch is up, my VTX is turned off. When I flip that down, then it turns my VTX on. And then I have my RSSI and my OSD on channel 12, or on input 12. So now you can see that, all the information. Okay. So now we go over to mixer. The first 4 are the same. Now on the arm, now watch when I go up one, okay? And when I go to arm, see how it just pops up L2? Back up. See how it says arm? L2. There's a special command you have to put in further down from the mixer to get this switch to act like an arming switch, and a backup. So you'll see L2 there. Now in here we just have the normal mix. You can see there's nothing really that different. Now the next one is our mode, which we've already explained all that, but you can see the weights and the way I've kind of called, named them and whatnot. And then the next one is the beeper. So you can see. And then the next one is the air mode. So that's this switch here. When I let off of it, I have air mode on. So that's all the information for that. And then turtle mode. So that's this switch here. And then the real pit. So that's this switch here. And then we have our RSSI, so you can see the values for that. Okay, and that's all I have set up for this quad. Now we page again on the outputs. this is something that's going to depend on what you have your setup. It might be different for each thing, but you can see that the values are not negative 100 and positive 100. These values are set because in Betaflight, when you're in your receiver tab, you can set your weights to exactly 1,000 and exactly 2,000. You don't use these trims with a quadcopter. You use this screen here, so you can change your inputs. When we go into Betaflight, I'll try to explain that a little bit more. I might even change one to kind of give you an idea. Okay, curves, I don't do anything in there for this quad. Now here is the logic switches. Okay, this is something on my screen right there bugging me. Okay, so this is the logic switches. This is where you get your arming, where you get your sticky switch or your secondary arming, whatever people are calling it. So the first L1, you're going to type in edge and then SA down. That SA down is my switch. Your SA, which is this one, and then your weight, or you're telling it, 0 time, smaller than or less than the SH. So that'd be this one. Okay, so you're telling it to set up these two. And then the next one is your sticky switch, the function. So sticky switch, the V1 is your L1 and the V2 is your SA. And that's what position you're going to have them in. Okay. Hope that makes sense to you. You have a sequence when you're holding that up, then you save that. Okay. Special functions, I don't have anything. And then telemetry. This is all the telemetry that I gather from the SmartPort telemetry, the uninverted tab on the RXSR. So that's where all this information's coming from. And then we'll plug it in and I'll show you my scripts here. All right, so plug in the quad. And now we go to page, just hold it down. The telemetry information comes up. So I have the quad over there. So we're at 90 on the RSSI. And then the battery voltage, I just have a 3-cell plugged into it. And then you hit the page button. And then let me get to the first screen. So then here's the PIDs. These are the PIDs that I run for this. So you can see each one of these. And you can change it, obviously, through LewisScript. And then you hit your center button. And then these are my rates. And then my VTX information. Okay. So it's pretty nice to have that on there. Okay. So if you have any questions on how I set that up or things of that nature, let me know for the transmitter side. And let me turn off some of this lighting. I want to show you these LEDs
telemetry lost.
These LEDs are super bright. So you have the white headlights, and then the red tail lights. Pretty cool. I don't know. I just had to show you again. It's just so, I don't know. It's just so much fun. Because when this thing's flying toward you, I don't know, it's just kind of ominous, this really bright, and you can see that they're two individual headlights and the rear tail lights. I don't know. I don't know. It's just kind of fun because they head straight out at you. So anyway, so now we'll go ahead and jump into beta flight.
Telemetry lost.
And I'll go through each screen of beta flight and try to show you as much as I can, and then I'll show you the diff file and the CLI. Alright, so we're in beta flight. We're going to go ahead and connect up. So we have the quad connected. So everything's working there. That's the first thing you want to check, is making sure that that moves around just the way it is in your hand, moving around. And then once it's on a flat surface that you know is level, click on calibrate accelerometer. Unless you're only going to fly acro, I guess it doesn't matter then. And then you can look at your, now for the RSSI you might notice it's 50%. I don't have a battery plugged in. That's one thing about the Mamba stack. The Mamba stack doesn't run your receiver or your VTX. You have to plug in a battery for it to power up those things. Okay, but we don't need it plugged in right now. Then we're going to go over here to the ports tab. The first one here is your USB. Don't mess with that at all. UART 1, 3, and 6. The Mamba stack only has the 1, 3, and 6. So we have UART 1 on our RXSR, so we're going to turn that on. And then on UART 3, we have our IRC tramp protocol. So that's the UART 3 is what is connected for our smart audio for our VTX. And that was the green wire going to the VTX for this BDB. And then UART 6, we don't have anything tab turn on, but we have smart port on that TX6 pad. So we're just going to go to our telemetry and we're going to put our smart port on that TX6. We're going to save and reboot. We come back in, we're going to go to configuration, run DShot 600 and motor stop. I have this turned on, so don't spin the motors when armed. Basically, I don't want my motor spinning because when I turn my arm switch forward, the beeper goes off. That lets me know that I'm about to arm. So in the motor stop, I want that on because I pull my air mode switch up to disengage air mode, and then my motors will come to a stop. So when I land on the deck, I explained earlier. So I have that on. I have my props in reverse for a 3-inch. It just seems to have, you know, a more locked in feel, more authority in turns, all that kind of stuff. I flew for a while and just, you know, having it regular, and then I reversed them, you know, a while back, and it just seemed to handle a lot better. So I decided to keep them reversed. Of course, in BO Heli, you have to change it to make sure that they're correct. Didn't really change much else. Turned on the accelerometer in case I'm wanting to fly in a different mode. Arming 180 degrees in case it's hanging in a tree or something. S-bus. Telemetry on because we have smart port telemetry coming from the uninverted signal on the RXSR. So when you turn the telemetry on, it'll gather that information. LED strip is turned on. I had to resource the LED pad on the Mamba stack, so that's why that's turned on. My OSD is turned on. You notice I have air mode turned off because I have it on a switch. Anti-gravity is on. And then you can set up your beeper however you want. Now I do have my beeper set up on crash flip, which is turtle mode. So while I'm in turtle mode, it's going to beep. So that way it announces to everybody that the props are about to spin. Save and reboot. Power and battery. Kind of the usual stuff. I don't have anything connected right now. Voltmeter. amp meter. Now my scale is custom to my quadcopter. I put it on the bench and spooled up the props and everything, so this is custom to mine. I put a amp meter on it and did all the math and measurements. It's quite in depth. Just hit save when you're done. And then we'll go over to failsafe. Pretty much all default stuff here. I just have it to drop, so if I lose transmission signal to the RXSR, it'll just go ahead and drop out of the sky. PID tuning. These PIDs are my PIDs. I've kind of went higher and lower on each one of these to decide, you know, what was the best for me. I like it to be locked in, but I don't want it robotic. I like it to just still have a little bit of loosey-goosey, but not twitchy. The D is set at 8. These are pretty small motors. You don't want to burn them up. So it handles prop wash okay. I wouldn't say it handles it great, but it does a pretty good job. Just, you know, don't fly in your own prop wash. My rates, everything else is pretty much default. Didn't change anything in here. If you change your PIDs, go ahead and hit save. Go into receiver. Now I'll have to hook up the battery here and we'll check out the receiver tab. Alright, so we'll go ahead and plug in the quadcopter. And I got the transmitter turned on. So now we have, earlier I had told you about the inputs screen on the Taranis, and all those values were kind of 97, 96, so on and so forth. And the reason for that is because you can change this, so you see your roll, pitch, yaw, and throttle goes to 2000. So if you put your sticks all the way in the top right corner, both sticks, that should be 2000 on all four. And then it should be 1000 on all four when you go all the way to the bottom left with both sticks. If it doesn't do that for you, you can go into that setting in your transmitter and change those and kind of dial it in just right. There's a lot of videos out there for that. So I have my transmitters, the QX7 FR Sky, so this is the setup. My RSSI, you can kind of see my RSSI kind of moving around here. So AUX 8 is my RSSI channel. I think this is all stock here. So throttle up, throttle down, just kind of check all the stuff here and make sure everything works like it should. This should be 1000, throttle all the way to the bottom, and these should be 1500 when you're not touching the sticks. AUX 1. Now you see right now I'm AUX 3. I'm clicking on my arming switch, but remember that sticky switch. I have to pull up on the sticky switch, which is AUX 4. So I pull up on the sticky switch, which is also my air modes switch. So when I let off of it, it puts it in air mode. We'll see that more in the modes tab. So I pull up on that momentary switch, pull it to arm. Now do you see AUX 1 went? That sticky switch has to be pulled up for that to work. Okay. So then I know my beeper is on AUX 3. And then my VTX. So AUX 6 is my VTX power on and off. My modes, so horizon, so AUX 2. You want to write these down as you go through your switches. And then my AUX 5 is going to be my turtle mode. So that's all my switches. So write down each channel, each AUX channel that it's in, so when you go in modes tab, you have a better understanding of what you're doing. So click save. Alright, now we'll go over to our modes tab, because we wrote down each one of these. You definitely want to write these down when you're in here. So we got them all written down, whatever switch does what. So we go to Modes tab. Now, like I said, if I flip my arm switch all the way forward, it doesn't do anything. Okay? AUX 1 only works when we pull up on that sticky switch. Okay? You can see it went all the way over. So it's going to arm. Now we're plugged into Betaflight, so this isn't going to light up for you. Okay? With the sticky switch by itself doesn't do anything. Arming switch by itself doesn't do anything, but both of them together, then it will activate that. So that's AUX 1, not 3. Okay. Angle mode is on AUX 2, so we wrote down when I change my modes. So you have that set up on AUX 2. We go down to beeper. So I use the same switch for my arming switch and my beeper. So one click forward turns on my beeper. See, AUX 3. So that's my beeper. Go down a little more. Air mode is on right now because my sticky switch, air mode, you know, that momentary switch, when I pull up on it, it disables air mode. So that way when I take off, I'm disabling it. And then when I'm flying, I have air mode on the whole time, and then when I come in to land, I can disable it again. So that way the thing ain't bouncing around and getting all crazy. Go down a little bit further, flip over when crashed. So this is going to be my turtle mode switch. And it beeps the whole time I have turtle mode on. It's out there in the grass beeping. That's just my preference. You can turn it off. You can go into that configuration and go down to turn that off if you want. But I like to have it on. And somebody's near it, they want to, oh, I can pick it up for them. You know, you want that to beep and lets them know that something's about to happen. We go down a little bit further here. User 1, AUX 6. That's the VTX switch. So VTX on, VTX off. I have a whole video on installing that reel pit and shows you how to get this to show up and all that. I don't really want to go through it in this video because it's quite lengthy. So when you're done with your modes, you have them all set up the way you want them. You can go ahead and click save. And I didn't do anything in adjustments. I didn't do anything in servos. I didn't do anything in motors. We can go into our OSD. All right. Now the OSD is going to be something that's going to be pretty much something that's your preference. You're going to set it up however you want. This is kind of what I have turned on and how I've got it set up and all that jazz. So I have it on auto. Now I know some guys have had issues where the OSD information won't show up, so they have to go in and click either PAL or NTSC, you know, to get that OSD information to come up. But I have it on auto because I don't have any issues with that with this camera and flight controller. So you can kind of see what I've put in here. I have an RSSI warning set up. So that way if my RSSI, I can turn this warning on, and then if my RSSI drops to 35, this will go crazy, flashing, and it catches my attention. I do like to fly this as far as I can. All this other information is kind of whatever you want to do. The other thing I've had is on the it was what the Foxeer Falcor Mini camera and Foxeer Clear TX2 VTX. I had all kinds of little teeny lines, little dashes, and little, I don't know, just like little intermittent dots and dashes and lines all over the place in my goggles. So you come into Font Manager and upload font and then save it, reboot. And when you come back in, all that's gone. So that's a little trick. So picking this for your OSD to show up and then reloading your font manager is kind of a little trick to fix those things. LED strip. I don't have programmable LEDs, even though I resourced that LED pad. I have nothing going on in here. Nothing in sensors, nothing in tethered or black box for this. So go into CLI. and running. This is the version that I'm running, 3.30. So important to have your version updated for Lewis script and other information, other things you might want to do. So make sure you're up to date on that. And then we can pull up the diff file. So these are all the things that I've done differently. So I've changed my name. Now resource this information right here and more down here. Let me see where it's at here. Right here. So these are the things that are different that I put in the real pit installation video. Okay. So we had to resource that LED strip, the pad on the mama stack, because I don't use programmable LEDs, so my LEDs are wired direct to the battery. So I had to resource that pad to get that switch in modes to work. So watch that video and you'll see how to get that done. Didn't do anything with mixer, didn't do anything with servo mix, nothing. Features, these are the things that I've changed in the configurator tab. So my motor stop, telemetry on, LED strip on, the anti-gravity on. Oops. All the beeper information. I redid the mapping from default because I use a QX7 and this is the map for that. Serial. Have I think that's for my, if I remember right, that's for my smart port telemetry. LED, nothing, no color, nothing there. The AUGs, this is my modes setup. This is what I have set up for the modes tabs. Don't have anything else for all this stuff. And master, these are all the things that I've changed. The D-Shot 600, blah 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 blah. OSD warning, timer, all the other stuff that I chose for OSD. Like I said, it's however you feel, whatever you want to do. PIDs, this is what I've changed my PIDs to. And then my rates. And that's it. Hey, I really appreciate your time. I had a really good time filming this and just kind of thinking of how to share what I've done. So if you wanted to make a freestyle 3-inch with some, good flight time and, really rip up a smaller, couple acres of trees or whatever, you should be able to build one just like this. And I appreciate your time and please subscribe.